Few people realize that with 4.5 million cars sold, this is definitely India's most successful nameplate, the one that has put our nation on wheels. So stick around while we take a fascinating look at every single generation of this car put on sale. The Maruti Alto has just turned 25, and with almost 5 million cars sold, it's clearly the largest selling car in India. It, however, doesn't quite get the recognition it deserves. So come with us as we try and remedy that. We'll take a look at every significant generation, drive each significant car, and finally see what made this nameplate a success. Let's dive straight in. First up, the Alto 800 and the 1.1. Now, October 2000 is when we got these two cars, this one and the 1.1, to do our story. And that was the cover we did. It was an exclusive story. And in that, listen to these prophetic words. It's not every month that Maruti, India's largest manufacturer, launches a model that by its own admission will be pivotal to the company's future. 25 years on, more than 4.5 million cars sold. And yes, this is the car that has sold the most in India. This 800 came with the F8D engine. It was fuel injected and it gave it a reasonable amount of power. But the 1.1, that was a really fun car. And it was quite easy to distinguish initially because the 1.1 had a tacho and a speedo, whereas this car just had a large speedometer. Despite numbers today, the Alto wasn't a runaway success. And that's because initially it was priced a good deal higher than the 800. Now, a fun fact is that although the Alto name was used in Japan on the Zen and on the 800 sold in that market, this was the first Alto sold in India. Getting into the cabin, however, reminded me that this car is really narrow. The seats are placed much closer to each other, and that's because of greater safety margins than there are on the 800. Now this Gen 1 Alto doesn't feel as basic as I remember it to be because it's been embellished and enhanced beautifully. But immediately what is different is that this one's got an upgraded instrument panel with a tacho. The original 800 didn't have one. And yes, when I drive it, I do remember the F8D's thrummy note, its good responses, and the fact that on a light and easy throttle, this car motored along quite seamlessly. This is the 4 valves per cylinder fuel-injected version of the 800 engine, remember? And the raised suspension also means the Alto rides well on bad surfaces. Get onto an open road, however, and it feels breathless. And the other amazing thing, even 25 years on, is that this remains a dependable and trustworthy Maruti. At no point in time do I feel something could go wrong and this car could leave us stranded. Now for the much nicer first gen Alto, the 1.1 litre. Now this is a car I remember very clearly driving even 25 years on, driving up to Lonavala and getting surprised by how quick and how fun it was. Basically a 4-cylinder version of the F8D that was in the 800cc car. You could tell by this badge and uniquely the rear wiper. In fact, it's the only Alto that gets a rear wiper to date. Now I remember this car really surprised us when it was new. It did a 0 to 100 in 13.9 seconds. I can still remember the time. And that's because when you put your foot down, wow, it had tremendous legs. It was fun, it was quick. This 4-cylinder engine had 17 horsepower more and was only 20 kilos heavier. Put your foot down like this and it really did pick up. Other things that distinguished this car, it also had a cover on the gear lever, though the gearbox was nowhere near as slick as something like a Zen. The 1.1 was soon discontinued. So if you wanted a zippy Alto, for a time there was really nothing. But that's until this next car came along. Now 10 years later, still Gen 1 is this facelift, and it's not just a facelift with an all-new frontage. It came with a new engine. This is the K10 engine. The first time it gets an aluminium block, 68 horsepower, and the fun fact is even today's Alto gets a 68 horsepower engine despite increasing emission and fuel economy norms. There are some embellishments on the inside like cup holders, and the seat backs get scooped out for greater legroom. But the real story was the new engine. Now this is the first generation K10. You can tell by these rings of brushed aluminium on the instrument panel. Of course, they are plastic. And this one blended the performance of the 1100 with the efficiency of the smaller 800. And wow, even today, this thing just runs. It's both responsive and likes to rev, and that makes it a really fun engine for this light car. Wow, that's seriously fun. This engine also makes more torque than the 1.1, so it has a fair amount of zip. Even the steering is nice and light, but I wish it had a bit more stability at speed, especially since it has so much go. And it doesn't feel quite as well screwed together. The steering is also super light and makes it feel like a shopping trolley. Up next, the Alto 800. Now this is the 2012 Gen 2 car, completely different body but same platform and a lot of interesting features. For one, it got an all-new dash and interior. The headrests on the seats were integrated. Maruti said they're more sporty, but they were actually cheaper to make. And so that Maruti didn't give away that massive goodwill it had with so many years of the 800, it combined the two names and called this the Alto 800. And the new dash was also flat and space efficient. Even the door pads were optimized to give it more space on the inside. And this was the first Alto you could specify with an airbag and CNG. In addition, this car also gets a corrugated roof for greater strength. The Alto by this time was finally the best-selling car in India. Now with its light steering and responsive nature, this F80, the 800, still was extremely responsive. And without emission norms that choked it, it was great in the city. Now the responsive 800 engine is just as good. Look at that. And it does motor along beautifully. What also helps in the city is this light steering, and well, it's just a car where you want to carve up traffic and make better time than any other car on the road. So yes, despite the fact that affordable and efficient, it's also quite charming. The power steering, however, is too light, but the Alto 800 was good enough to see off the poor handling Hyundai Eon. Now in 2014, Maruti launched the Alto with an automatic gearbox for the first time. You also got a K10 version. Maruti also tried to upgrade the interior. They gave it a two-tone dash and it got a 2-DIN slot so you could upgrade to a larger, better music system. Now this variant wasn't the first Alto to get CNG, but because it had the more sprightly K10 engine, after that initial bit of hesitation, throttle responses were pretty good. The CNG-powered K10 probably had the ideal mix, both efficient and peppy. And what it did was combine great fuel efficiency and low running cost with decent performance. The gas even makes this 3-cylinder smoother. The suspension of this car, however, seems to have suffered, especially with the weight of that gas cylinder over the rear. The CNG variant, however, helped take on the Renault Kwid, the one that got the touchscreen. Maruti put a touchscreen in the next generation Alto, the 3rd gen. Now an all-new look for this 3rd generation car. It's nice, clean, quite different from the earlier ones, and it's built on the Hardtech platform. You also get a digital instrument panel, and the interesting thing is that the power and weight of the original K10 and this car is roughly in the same area over the generations. 740 kilos, 68 or 67 horsepower, that's remained a constant. Now in the Gen 3 Alto, and as ever the K10 engine is nice and responsive. That's despite the new emission norms. And you do get this smart play screen, so a big upgrade here. But this AMT is still a bit jerky, and although the steering is nice and light, it isn't the most stable car at speed. The amazing bit is that even 25 years on, this car still retains that comfortable, light, small, compact, easy, effortless and fuel efficient character it had. Does it have enough appeal for tomorrow's drivers? Well, that's another question entirely. The Alto's success was built on a simple but powerful formula: affordability, reliability, efficiency, and sufficient space. It was a car that suited first-time buyers and was the ideal companion for small towns. And it clearly stands as the all-time bestseller in India. Still, with the move to SUVs at all price points and the increase in costs associated with safety and emissions, can India's best-selling car still remain a compact hatch? Not if someone can deliver a lot of SUV for similar money. And that's the Alto's real challenge. So will there be an all-new Alto? The odds are clearly stacked against it. And there currently is no future generation on the cards. Here's what owners think of their Altos.
So I got this car in October of 2024, and the idea was to take something which is very raw and mechanical, take something that has been overlooked because of its sheer volume that it has been sold, but the idea is to make it a lot more desirable. So that is where it all started. What I like about this car is it is the smallest in my entire garage, and yet it is the one that gets a lot more attention.
So I was looking for a fun, reliable city commuter which can also keep up with modern day traffic on the highways. So that was the main reason for looking at a Gen 1 K10. Plus I feel this is like the nicer looking K10s of the lot. So that's why I got this. I think it almost feels like a go-kart on the road to drive. It's quite light, so it feels quite peppy and gives a good run for the money for these modern hatchbacks.
Well, to be honest, this is not my car. It's actually my sister's, and the reason we bought it for because it's so tiny and so compact and it's so easy to learn on, and that's something she really appreciates. It's easy to park also. It has a good engine, a good gearbox, and it has a sound system and AC, and that's all you really need.